Hello, my name is Kieran Hayes and welcome to my review of the Nikon Z 50mm f1.8 versus the Viltrox 50mm f2 air lens, and which one is the better one for you and why. Now obviously you would say the Nikon f1.8 is by far and away the superior lens because this Viltrox lens is roughly on 1/3 of the price, nearly half the weight, and physically it's a lot smaller than 2, as you can see here now. So in reality, this should be incredibly unfair. Well, you would think it would be anyway. So come on, let's get into it and see which one is gonna be best for you and why. Now, according to the price, you would think the Nikon is going to be built better, and yes, in ways, it is. And you're right, as this lens is weather sealed and it is a nice metal body, whereas the Viltrox is mainly plastic. But it's a strong, non-flexing type of plastic that feels very solid in your hand, and you can feel it's also well made, just like the Nikon. Now, looking at the focus rings then, and there is very little to choose between them, and they both work reasonably well and they're both nice and smooth, the Nikon being slightly better damped there, but there's only a slight difference in it. Now also the focus ring on the Nikon is slightly larger and easier to grab than it is on the Viltrox, so if you need to grab, focus and manually focus really quickly, that is handy. Also though, in saying that, it's also easier to accidentally pop into manual focus with the Nikon lens as the focus ring is so large. So you would say that's 2 minor victories there for Nikon, but when it comes to size and weight, the Viltrox wins out there. As you can see physically, there is a good difference between them size-wise, and with the weight of the Viltrox weighing only 220 grams, while the Nikon weighs 415 grams, so again, Viltrox wins on that one. So it's 2-all on the scorecard right now. And no, I haven't included price as of yet in that, even though we did just talk about it, because that's something I'm going to talk about towards the end when we talk about value for money out of these lenses and which one is best there. So let's have a look at sharpness. And this is where a lot of people would expect a good separation in these lenses. And honestly, I had to double check myself here, as this is just way too close. Looking at my test chart image now, and we will zoom in at 200% to the center here. First on the Nikon 50mm f1.8, and as you can see, that's really sharp. So let's pop up the Viltrox image now too, and both of these were shot at f2 on a 46 megapixel camera. It is close, and I do mean close, with Nikon just winning out here. But remember, this is at 200%, and this is pixel peeping at its absolute finest. Stopping down to f2.8 now, and you can see the Viltrox does regain a small bit more sharpness here now, but it's still not as good as the Nikon. At f4, it's the same thing, not as good. f5.6, again the same. f8, again, and f11. And as you can see, across all these apertures, the Viltrox lens is just not as sharp as the Nikon lens. But again, please do remember, this is zoomed in at 200%. So let's have a look at corner sharpness now. And spoiler alert, I think this is where the Nikon does win by a good bit. But then again, the Viltrox also does a really good job, but I'll let you decide which one is right for you here. So this is our test chart now again, and we're going to zoom in at 200% in the bottom right hand corner. And again, this is the Nikon and this is the Viltrox, both shot at f2. And you can quite clearly see the Nikon is sharper at f2 here. There is no comparison between the two. And when we then stop down to f2.8, the Nikon gets sharper again, and at f4 it's getting good. At f5.6 again the Nikon is sharper, and then at f8 the Viltrox lens is getting sharp, but the Nikon is pin sharp in all fairness. Finally then, at f11 you can see the Nikon is sharper than the Viltrox lens. Now please do remember, this is zoomed in at 200% and this is pixel peeping at its absolute finest. So this is an extreme test. But if you really are concerned about corner sharpness, the Nikon is clearly sharper than the Viltrox. Okay, so now let's look at bokeh and how these two lenses render backgrounds and the transitions you can get from them, and which one is going to be right for you. or will you even see a difference? So here we have the Viltrox now at f2 at the closest focusing distance. So just to give you an idea of the backgrounds this is going to render for you. So this is at f2, so I'll go f2.2, f2.5, f2.8. See, as I'm increasing the aperture, you can see the depth of field starting to increase in the image itself. So there we go. So this is the Viltrox lens. Now let's have a look at the Nikon lens. So this now is the Nikon f1.8 lens. And again, I did set up exactly the same way as I had the Viltrox lens set up. And as you can see, no problem focusing the eye. So I'm just going to move Dobby further forward and see, yeah, again, closest focusing distance is better on the Nikon lens. So if that is something that is important to you, then the Nikon is clearly better here. And there it's struggling. So I'll go back to about here and it should be all right. So looking at the difference here now straight away, you can see there really is a big difference between the Nikon and the Viltrox lens here. But we're shooting at f1.8 here now and Dobby is closer. So I'm going to move Dobby back to where it was with the Viltrox lens. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in along here now again and focus on the eye, and I'm going to change the aperture to f2. And that is more representative of what we're getting with the Viltrox lens. The Nikon lens is still rendering nicer out of focus backgrounds though. But again, f2, we're going to go f2.2, f2.5, 2.8, 3.2. And as you can see here now, the Nikon is the clear winner here. It's as simple as that. It really and truly is. So if that is your primary concern, the Nikon f1.8 is going to be better than the Viltrox f2 lens. So now it's time to look at focus accuracy and focus speed and to see which one is faster. And again, this one's going to go with the Nikon, I'd say. But let's check it out and see how much of a difference there really and truly is. So this is the Viltrox 50mm f2 here now. And again, we're focused on Dobby's eye at the closest focusing distance. So what I'm going to do is zoom into the background and focus there. And then come to the foreground again and focus there. And that'll give you an idea of how quick this lens focuses. So let's have a look at the Nikon lens now next. Again, we're focused on Dobby's eye. So if I go to the background here now and focus on that, you can see it's very positive and quite quick. We go back to Dobby's eye. There we go. And back to the background again. That's it. As regards focusing speed, there is very little between the two of them, but the Nikon is faster here. It is just fractionally faster. But the Viltrox, there is nothing whatsoever wrong with it. So now we're going to have a look at focus breeding, and again, there's very little between these two lenses here. So this is the Viltrox lens here now, and as I zoom backwards and forwards, you can see there is very little focus breeding in this lens. So let's go check the Nikon lens now. And looking at the Nikon lens here now and focusing on the foreground and the background, you can see there actually is no focus breeding on this lens. So the Nikon lens is clearly the winner here again. Distortion is next on our list, and boy, this was a close one, ladies and gents. It really and truly was. So we're back to our test chart image here now again, and this was shot on the Nikon f1.8 lens. And as you can see, we have a bit of barrel distortion. Not a lot, but there's a bit of it there. But interestingly now, when we look at the Viltrox lens, we have a tiny bit of pincushion distortion. And when you're alternating between the images, it looks like there's a drastic difference. It's because one is barrel distortion and the other is pincushion distortion. There's so little between the two of these here, it's just crazy. Vignetting now, and both of these lenses do a really good job here. So this is the Nikon lens at f2 now, and you can see there's a bit of vignetting in the corners. When we stop down to f2.8, that vignetting gets a lot better. And at f4, it's absolutely perfect. So let's have a look at the Viltrox now. And this is the Viltrox shot at f2. And as you can see, again, we have vignetting in the corner. At f2.8 now though, that vignetting is gone. And at f4, again, it's perfect. So maybe the Viltrox has a very, very, very slight edge here, but it really is very, very slight. Okay, so it's review conclusion time, and what do you think? At nearly 1/3 of the price, but yet with a performance that's nearly the same as the Nikon. I know it's not, but it is nearly the same, and for most people, this is going to be completely acceptable, and you will not see the differences in the two of them. For a lot of people out there, just being brutally honest. And for clients, I genuinely do not think they'll see the difference. Personally, I was shocked just how close the Viltrox got to the Nikon lens, considering this is one of the budget or Air series of lenses from Viltrox, and not one of the Lab series of lenses, which are getting a fantastic reputation now for pin sharp images and beautiful rendering, which for all us photographers out there is absolutely fantastic news, and why I love to see companies like Viltrox pushing the envelope on what's possible, as that in turn puts pressure on Nikon to keep producing even better equipment and possibly reducing their prices a small bit too as well. Remember, competition is what's needed to keep prices down and companies innovating. So in reality, it's a win-win for everyone, and long may it continue. But more importantly though, what I'd love to know is, which one would you buy, or did you buy? And did you think you made a mistake? All along, I was mainly a Nikon glass shooter, but I have to say I am seriously considering the Viltrox 135 f1.8 lens now. From what I've seen, that is one absolutely amazing lens, and I'm seriously thinking about buying it at the moment. Anyway, thanks again for watching, ladies and gents, and see you out there, or see you in the next video, everyone.